Hi, my name is Abhilay, and in this set of tutorials, we'll talk about some of the data utilities that come bundled with PyTorch. So let's start with some introduction. PyTorch comes with a lot of common datasets, and while these datasets are very useful when learning machine learning or doing novel research to beat some established benchmarks, they are not of much use for practical applications. And that is because data in the wild does not come neatly packaged as batches of torch.tensor. For example, you could have your e-commerce transaction data sitting in a cluster of MySQL databases, where your data, each instance is an RDBMS row. Or you could have your IoT telemetry data streaming in through Kafka streams, and in which case your data format will be Kafka messages. Or you could be analyzing patient and health records for HMO in a Hive data warehouse. And what we'll do in this set of tutorials is learn how to use the PyTorch data library, which is really all the stuff inside torch.utils.data, to actually convert all of these various data sources into neat batches of useful tensors. And the two main classes that we'll work with are datasets and data loaders. And we'll see in detail what each one of these are. So let's start with the data set. A data set is really an abstraction over your actual data. What do I mean by that? Your data could be living on your local disk, and your data set will represent your entire data that's living on the local disk. So when your model wants to access the data from your disk, it will ask the data set to get the data. The benefit is that if your data is living in a huge data warehouse where you have to connect through a remote machine, your model still does not have to change anything about itself. It still talks to the data set, and the data set will figure out how to get the data from this data warehouse. So that's what I mean when I say that it is an abstraction over your actual data. And like we alluded to earlier, your data set can yield any sort of data. And usually it will yield a single instance of the data from the underlying store. So for example, it could give us a row from a SQL database, or a photograph from some computer vision data set, or an audio file from some audio data set, or it can give us a bunch of text tokens from a big corpus of text. But the point is it will give us a single instance of data from the underlying store. Let's consider a computer vision data set that gives a single photo along with its label as a single data element. Now the problem is that is not what our computer vision model expects. It wants a well-formatted numerical multidimensional tensor. And that is when DataLoader enters the arena. What it does is it will sample a bunch of individual instances from the dataset. It will create a batch of this sample, and it will collate this batch into this multidimensional tensor that can then be forwarded to our model. Now, DataLoader is a very heavy-duty class that does a lot of different things, and we will dig into its details in a later video. But for now, remember that the three main things that a DataLoader does is it samples individual instances from the dataset, creates a batch out of it, and then collates that batch from its native format into a tensor.